Number one, in the future, don't confuse the term predestination with Augustinian predeterminism or Calvinistic predestination. Everyone believes in predestination.
Okay.
It's what you believe about it. So if you're a Calvinist, you believe God has predetermined everything that takes place, even the suffering and the pain and the misery. That's the Calvinist view, because God will use that to accomplish a greater good, to bring him glory. That was a view I used to believe, but thank God I don't believe it. But there is another understanding of predestination, that God in his foreknowledge, God in his foreknowledge. Now, this is very complicated when we speak about God, because God is a being unlike us. The way he sees reality, the way he perceives reality, and the way he knows is infinitely more complex than us, right?
Right.
So we are finite human maggots trying to figure out how this God, who knows all things, can create a world in such a way where we human beings make genuine choices that impact what takes place on earth. This is the complicated dilemma that Christian philosophers are trying to wrestle with. So another view says that God in his foreknowledge already took into consideration that if he creates this world with this amount of human creatures, then their choices will bring about these effects. And so God, knowing that, will then take those actions of free will creatures into consideration to eventually work out everything to fulfill his perfect will. So that the suffering is not what God predestined. The suffering is what God knew would occur if he creates a world where humans make genuine choices, or spirit creatures like Satan make genuine choices that go against his prescriptive will. This is the dilemma that we have in trying to reconcile both realities of what the Bible teaches. You get my point?
I do, yes. I heard you say something to this effect. You were talking about how when Jesus came to Jerusalem, I think,
Yes,
that he was sad that the people, his chosen people, would
Luke
reject.
19, 41, 44.
Yeah. Okay.
He cried. But did the Lord know they would reject him? Yes. But did the Lord truly desire they would believe in him? Yes. Did the Lord predestine they would reject him? No. But the Calvinists will say yes. In the Calvinists, God predetermined they would reject Christ, and yet Christ will start weeping and crying over a people that he predestined not to believe in him. This was the dilemma that I, as a Calvinist, wrestled with, and Calvinists still wrestle with, until I finally said, why am I a Calvinist? It makes no sense. So now, but we still have this tension. Okay, God knows that they'll reject Jesus. Yes. Yet God doesn't want them to reject Jesus. No, he really wants them to believe in Jesus. Yes, when I say God, I mean God the Father, because he's God the Father. So Jesus is heartbroken and weeping because he wants them to believe in him. But he knows they won't. And then he'll use their rejection to bring about his death on the cross for our salvation. That's the tension.
Right.
So, and I'm letting you know, the more deeper you go into this, the more you're going to get confused. Because remember, we are finite, imperfect, temporal brains trying to wrestle with an infinite mind, and how he can know the end from the beginning and yet not cause the actions of creatures, and yet still be sovereign over our actions and take our actions into consideration to bring about his perfect will. That's why you'll have Molinism. That's why you'll have Arminianism, Provisionism, and sadly Calvinism, because we're all trying to wrestle and how to reconcile these two tensions. One thing I can tell you is Calvinism is not biblical. That I can tell you. Now, what is the most accurate summation to the reality of God knowing the end from the beginning, but not predestining the choices of creatures, like predestining you to sin and then holding you accountable for your sin, and then use, well, you're left with now the Arminian view or the provisionist view, or you're left with open theism. These are only three, or Molinism, four views: open theism, Molinism, Arminianism, and provisionism. These are the only four views that you need to explore and wrestle with, because I'm letting you know Calvinism is not biblical. That, don't even bring it into the table. Reject it. These other four views, study, and you come to your own conclusion.